going on, YouTube? Welcome to the Living Freed channel. My name is Tyler Freed, and in this video, I'm going to be debunking the belief that you cannot retire from trucking. You cannot create financial freedom as a truck driver or working in the trucking industry. I'm going to debunk that myth. And the reason I'm going to debunk that myth is because I've seen a lot of people here on YouTube that talk about trucking content or whatever, they make trucking content, and they impact a lot of people that watch them. And they're saying that, retirement's a myth, it's a scam, it's unachievable. And I'm going to be making a video disagreeing with that. And I'm going to do it respectfully, and I'm going to do it with facts and numbers. And the reason I'm going to do it, again, is because I think that that mindset is very destructive to your future. If you're somebody that believes it's impossible to build wealth, that it's impossible to create a comfortable retirement or build generational wealth even beyond your life, then you never will. And you'll never get started, too, on the right path financially. That's another thing. Look, it's better to strive to achieve financial freedom than to not try achieving it at all, right? Because let's say you're in the process of achieving it and you're halfway to FI and something happens to you and you do pass away. Well, if you have kids, if you have friends, family that can inherit that money, you benefited somebody. So make investing, make building wealth more than just about yourself. See, if something happens to me in the next 5 years, never know, it could. You never know how long you have on this earth. Well, guess who's going to inherit that money that I've accumulated, that wealth that I've accumulated? My wife, my son. If something happens to her, me and my son, or if something that happens to both of us, my son will inherit that, right? And so that's the point of building wealth, is not only to impact you, but to impact the people you love and extend it, even past the people you love, past your kids, their kids and their kids. They can keep growing it and growing it, the family wealth. That is what generational wealth is. And again, I've been seeing a lot of people talking about how it's impossible to achieve that. It's impossible to even retire yourself. And I'm going to show you and debunk that with the numbers and show you how you can do it and explain to you how you can do it. So if you're new to the channel, I appreciate you for clicking on the video. Make sure you stay tuned till the very end, because if you don't, you'll miss the entire point and you'll miss the facts about being able to build wealth. And you don't want to miss this. This is very important. If you're somebody looking at trucking as a long-term career, you need to get a plan in place for your money. Otherwise, it's not going to be worth your while. I believe that about every career, but especially trucking. We spend so much time out on the road. We sacrifice time with friends, family, giving up the quote-unquote normal life to be out here so that we can get ahead financially. And I'm going to show you how not only you can make great money in trucking, you can make between $80,000 and $120,000 a year as a company driver. And then if you go buy a truck, lease onto a carrier, or you're an independent owner-operator with their own authority, you can make $150,000, $200,000, even more if you're really specialized, or if you grow a fleet, you can go even beyond that. The sky is the limit as far as the income you can make in trucking, and I'm going to use a very average income in the trucking business or as a truck driver for my example in this video, but I just want to show you guys that even if you make a basic salary, you can build tremendous amounts of wealth over the very long run and in a short amount of time, and create huge amounts of options for yourself and for your family. So that is why I'm making this video. I just want to show you all that. So what is the step one? Step one is, look, if you want to get into trucking and focus on where you want to go. Invest in yourself first. Don't worry about saving, investing, none of that. Invest in yourself. Figure out where it is you want to go, whatever division you want to work in, and then stick with that and get really good at it and find the money in that division. There's money in drive-in, basic drive-in. There's money in that, large amounts of money in that. Reefer, flatbed, tanker, hazmat, doubles, triples, you name it. Oil field, car hauler. There's so many different avenues in trucking. Figure out where you want to go and what you want to stick with and get great at, and do that and make as much money as you can. The sky is the limit. You just have to be willing to do the work. So that's number one. Invest in yourself. Number two, when you invest in yourself and you start making really good money, use that money to get completely out of debt. And then after you get out of debt, don't ever go back into debt. Why get out of debt? Because you want to free up as much cash flow from your income as possible so that you can invest as much of that income as possible, right? And live comfortably. So live comfortably and invest. And both of those things can be done. Believe me, they can. Because when you get out of debt, you don't have car payments, you don't have student loan payments, you don't have credit card payments. You have more of your income to invest because you don't have all these payments. So your expenses are low. And in trucking, you can create a high income and have low expenses and invest the difference. That is how you build wealth. After you get out of debt, save a 6-month emergency fund in cash, put it in a high yield savings account, get as much for your savings as possible. But the point is to have it not invested, but have it sitting there. So if you ever have an unforeseen expense, you have the cash on hand to cover that expense. About 6 months of expenses will do and cover just about any expense you will possibly have, honestly. And why have that before starting investing? Because once you get out of debt, again, you want to stay out of debt. And so you don't want to have to go back into debt to cover an expense. Also, you don't want to start investing first before that emergency fund is saved, because if you do have that expense, you may be tempted to pull from that investment and cover that expense. And that'll actually hurt your long-term returns and the growth of your investment over time. So out of debt, build the emergency fund. And then after that, once you're out of debt and have that foundation laid, then think about investing. And that is where I'm going to show you what I do. Number one, I'm going to use me as an example, and I'll use a basic trucker income to show you the math on how if you invest it a certain way, you will get a certain rate of return over time, and it will equal millions and millions of dollars. I am going to show you that in this video. And so look, I'm pulling up right now a chart of the S&P 500, and I just want to show you something because this is one of the most popular indexes out there, one of the most popular investments out there. So why am I pulling up the S&P 500? Well, because me personally, I am a stock market investor. Now, I don't just buy the S&P 500, but this is the most popular and broadest the broadest index out there as far as the top three. So you got the Dow Jones Industrial Average, you got the NASDAQ 100, and then you got the S&P 500. Well, out of all three of those, the S&P 500 pretty much represents 80% of the U.S. stock market. Now, there's roughly 4,000 companies that are publicly traded in the U.S. stock market, but the top 500 make up or represent about 80 to 85% of the entire U.S. stock market. So, and it's the broadest of all the indexes, all the major indexes, meaning that it covers every sector of the economy. So every sector you own. So you own healthcare, technology, industrials, consumer discretionary, utilities. You own every part of the U.S. economy if you own if you own the S&P 500 index. Now, what do I personally do? I buy the total U.S. stock market index, so I don't just own the S&P. I do own it, but I also own that other part of the market, the smaller and mid-sized companies that aren't in the S&P 500. I own the total U.S. stock market index. That is what I buy, and they both pretty much go hand in hand. Whatever one does, the other does. They pretty much track evenly. Now, the only way the S&P would outperform slightly over the total market index is if large companies outperform smaller ones. But sometimes smaller companies actually outperform the larger ones. So I buy the whole market. That way I get exposure to not only the big dogs, but also the smaller up-and-coming companies. But the S&P is a great example as to if you were to buy a low-cost index fund with that money and just hold it for the very long term, you can get X rate of return and build wealth with that. And I am a long-term index fund investor. I am. That is what I've been doing for the last 5 years, and it's resulted in a multiple six-figure net worth. I don't say that to brag like I always say. I say that to show you that it can be done, and it's very simple. So, in short, why I'm an index. Now, I'm not against people that want to buy real estate either. I want to be clear. I'm not against people who want to buy real estate. Look, in my opinion, after you're out of debt and you have that emergency fund, invest in assets, okay? Invest in either businesses or real estate. Those are the two asset classes that me personally, I would invest my money in. Okay, and why do I say businesses? Well, a stock is a share in a company. So when you buy a stock in a company, you are part owner of that company. So you don't really own stocks, you really own a piece of a business. So start thinking as a business person or a business owner rather than just owning stocks. Okay, now you are buying publicly traded companies. Okay, so you could either invest in private companies, you start your own business, right? Or you could invest in public companies. You could also invest in real estate. Buy cash flow producing assets that also go up in value over time. Me, I want to buy at a very low cost the biggest, brightest, and best companies in the world. And I'm betting that those companies over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, even beyond that, are going to be worth way more than they are today. And that is why I pulled up a chart of the S&P 500 and the total US stock market. Pretty much it's the same thing on the graph. And even if you pull up a global stock market chart, it's pretty much the same thing. We live in a globalized economy, so if US stocks are going up, typically international goes up. Now, one may outperform the other in a given time period, but we live in a globalized world, so they never really go in opposite directions, the global stock market. Okay, and so, but sometimes international can outperform the US. Sometimes US can outperform international. Markets go in cycles. I also do own an international index fund as well with about 25% of my portfolio, but I'm just going to use the S&P in this example because it's the most popular one and it will make my point. The point is to get your money invested in assets. Me, I prefer index funds. That's why this is the example I'm giving. So you may be saying, well, stocks are risky. Stocks can go down a whole lot. Well, the average return of the S&P 500, pretty much the US stock market, over the last 30 years has been roughly 10 to 12%. You can see this here on the screen. This is on Dave Ramsey's website. He has an investment calculator, and you can put in your age and how long you plan to save and invest for, and you can see at whatever rate of return, and you can see how much money you will have over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I've shown this calculator before, and I'm going to get more into that. But you can see over the very long term, over the last 30 years, the S&P has averaged about a 10 to 12% rate of return. And when you look at this all-time return right here, this chart does not include dividends either. Okay, so if you own an index fund or you own dividend-paying stock, it could just be single stocks you buy, but I prefer index funds. If you own an S&P 500, you're going to get paid dividends on top of the actual appreciation, the growth of those companies, the stock prices going up in value over time. And you may be saying, well, what if the market crashes? What if the market crashes? That 10 to 12% return is over the last 30, 40 years, right? And that includes the 2000 dot-com bubble. That includes the stock market crash in 2008, 2009, the Great Recession. That includes that. That includes the COVID-19 crash in 2020. That includes the last 2 years of a bear market. We're just now reaching an all-time high in the S&P 500 from 2 years ago, late 2021. We're just now reaching that. But if you buy and hold America's and the world's biggest and brightest, best companies over the next 20, 30, 40 years, where do you think they're going to be, right? Where do you think the stock price is going to be for the entire market? Look at in February 3rd, 1984 until now, until 2023, or 2024, sorry, February 2024. Look, it was trading at 160 in 1984, and now it's trading at 48.86. That is the S&P 500. That is the compound effect of owning profitable companies, the best companies in the world, and holding them pretty much throughout your working lifetime until you're actually ready to withdraw money from the investment. Okay, and you can see all the dips along the way. You can see the dot-com bubble burst. Here's 2000 all the way down to 2003, and then we had a rise, and then the 2007 crash, and then all the way up, and then COVID-19, and then the last bear market. You can see all the ups and downs, but over time, slowly but surely, the market always trends up over time. Why? Because companies they innovate, they create new products and services, they become more profitable and more valuable over time. Okay. And so you could also do this with real estate too. You could do it with real estate if you focus on buying cash flow producing properties and buy and hold them for a really long time and accumulate properties throughout your working lifetime. You could also do the same thing with real estate. And to me, I think they're both effective ways to create and build wealth over time. And so now I'm getting close to the end of the video because I've made a lot of points I wanted to make. Okay. And so you're out of debt, you have an emergency fund, and you're ready to start investing. Maybe you want to invest in index funds, maybe you want to buy real estate like I just talked about. But if you were to pick being an index fund investor, and there's a book I recommend called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. You got to read that book. It goes way more in depth about how to do the plan I'm talking about. It's way more in depth than what I do in these videos because I don't have enough time to actually explain every way to set it up and put your life on autopilot and build wealth. So this is just a very generic explanation as to how to do it. Definitely go get educated. Don't just listen to me. Read some books. Read any book written by Jack Bogle or J.L. Collins. Those guys are great on teaching exactly what I'm talking about. And so let's say you're somebody, okay, we're gonna debunk the myth that you can't retire early. And early to people is, relative. To me, I would say come into this business with the plan to make it a longer term career, because why get into a field where it really is a career? It's not a short term job, honestly. If you're going to be a trucker and you're going to work in the trucking industry, you want to try to grow in that industry. So give yourself at least 10 years at the minimum to do what we're talking about, or 15 to 20 really. And if you do this for about 15 to 20 years, if you stay out of debt, live on less than you make, and invest the difference, a large percentage of your income, you can retire early. You can also build extraordinary amounts of wealth. Again, I'm going to show you that here. So let's say you're 25 and you're just now getting in the business and you're ready to start investing, okay? Everybody's situation's different. But let's say you're 25 and you're going to give yourself 20 years of driving. Now, this could be a combination of OTR, regional, local. You could do this with any type of trucking. Honestly, you could do it. But let's be honest, the average truck driver, does not make $50,000. I know that stat is out there, but that's a very skewed stat. If you're somebody working full-time as a driver, man, you can at the floor, with a year or more of experience at the floor, make about $80,000 a year without even trying, okay? You can really make six figures or more, and that's with a little bit of gumption and a little bit of hustle. But let's say this driver is going to make $80,000 per year. Okay, this guy is going to make $80,000 per year, and he is going to invest $20,000 per year. Okay, and I believe the amount, I did it before this video, and you can actually look it up yourself. He's going to invest 25% of his income. Very doable when you're out of debt. Very doable. 25% of his income. He makes 80. He's going to invest 25. That's $20,000 a year. So you're starting from nothing. How much will you contribute? It was 1666, but I didn't want to put 666, so I put the 7 at the end. But anyway, so let's say you're going to put, this equals about $20,000 a year right here. And the average return of the S&P 500 has been about roughly 10% per year over the last 40 years. So you got 20 years of a time horizon to achieve early retirement. Now, remember, financial independence is, hey, I can live on this income without having to work. I can pull about 3 to 4% from this portfolio without having to, and pay all my bills and not have to work for that money. That is early retirement. That is financial freedom. And so in this example, if you invest $20,000 a year at 10% for 20 years, you can expect to have about $1.2 million in 20 years by the age of 45. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be saying, well, that's if the market does return that, right? That's if, things go right. Well, if we have an end of the world scenario, an Armageddon, an economic collapse worldwide, if that happens, it's irrelevant talking about investing. It's irrelevant even talking about trucking, because the world as we know it wouldn't be the same. We wouldn't even have capitalism anymore. We would be pretty much killing each other for food and water and resources. It would be a different world. So those of you that believe that's going to happen, I would be loading up on guns, ammo, food, water, those type of things, end of the world scenario types of things. That's what I would be doing. But if you're like me and you believe that we are going to continue, this system is going to continue over time, then you need to get your money in assets. You need to invest in businesses and real estate. And so this is an example of you investing in the top 500 companies in the US. And again, that's after 20 years. That's just $20,000 a year, right? You could realistically probably save $24,000 a year, $2,000 a month on a $80,000 a year income. So we're not going to change the rate of return. We're just going to change how much you're putting in, right? And you can play with the numbers. 1.5 million. Okay, let's say your expenses were $40,000 a year, for example. Well, on a $1.5 million portfolio, if you were to pull 4% from that, it's about $60,000 a year. So if your expenses are 40 and you're pulling 4%, you're financially free. You have $60,000 a year of income that you don't have to work for by the time you hit about age 45. And a lot of you are not going to stop working too at this point. I'm not saying to retire early. I'm just saying get to a point of financial independence, really. Not retire early, not do nothing, but invest so that you can have the option of whether you want to work or not, or choose to do something else and work on your passion project, whatever that may be. The point is to create options for yourself, not to necessarily be able to retire early. It's to create that freedom, that time. That's the whole purpose of what I talk about on this channel, and I think everybody can do it. I think everybody can do it if they just get on a simple plan. Imagine having $1.5 million at 45, debt-free, having an emergency fund, and a really good job too, by the way. Why would you want to quit a really good job that's paying you really well and you're financially free? You can really just enjoy your life at this point, and really you could probably stop investing once you hit financial freedom and just let the dividends reinvest and compound for you and grow and just live on your income. Just live on it. You don't even have to invest anymore. You've already hit that number. And if you were to just leave it alone until you hit retirement age, the normal retirement age, which is like 60, 65 years old, if you just let it compound another, 15, 20 years, you're going to have like 3 times more than this, right? It's going to compound to, $3-6 million by the time you hit retirement age. It's going to double at least 2 more times, right? And so that is the point. That is the point. But can you do it? I just showed you. $2,000 a month for a truck driver out of debt is not a lot of money. We can all agree on that. $2,000 a month is $500 a week. Out of each paycheck, you're putting $500 a week away. By the way, there's people that put away a lot more than that. There's people investing $3,000 a month, okay? $3,000. Look, you'd be worth $2.2 million in 20 years. 20 years ain't a long time in a career. Most people get into a career and work until they're 65, 40 years, right? So you're already financially free. Most of you are financially free in the example I'm showing you. You could retire early if you wanted to, if you manage the money right? So moral of the story, and you can go on the internet, go type in Dave Ramsey's retirement calculator and plug in your age. Plug in what you can save every month and invest every month, and play with the numbers and just see what you can do. See the power of investing over long periods of time. It's unbelievable. I mean, just look, right? Let's say you stick with the $2,000 a month, and this will blow your mind, right? Let's say you're like, man, I want to work as long as I can. I want to work until I can start taking Social Security. Okay? So you're going to work till age 60, and you're going to put $500 a week away. consistently until age 60, right? That's 35 years. Pretty normal. Again, very normal for people to work careers that long. Well, look at that. After 35 years, just $2,000 a month, you're worth $7.5 million. $7.5 million. That is generational wealth. If you're living on 4% of that, you won't even need that amount of money to live on at 60. You won't even need that much. Most of this money will be passed on to your children and their children, and they can learn and adopt your good habits and learn to manage the money. That's up to you to really teach them how to do that. But if you do, they can take what you did and grow that into the future, and then their kids can continue on with it, and so on and so forth. And that's how you get families like the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts, the people that really run the world. Honestly, that's how you get these generational wealth families. The Trumps, I hate to say it, people that hate them, but I'm making a point. The Trump family, generational wealth, right? You can go on and on about different families who have created generational wealth and how they did it. And that is what they did. The person who started the dynasty, started the wealth building process, passed that knowledge and passed those resources on to their children, and their children took it and grew it, and so on and so forth, right? A great example of that, I'm going to end the video here. I really appreciate those of you that have stayed this far into the video. I try to make it as short, sweet, and to the point, but I got to make sure I explain everything when it comes to this and make it short enough for you to stay tuned and watch it, but also long enough to explain my point. But I am going to end with this. A good example of generational wealth that's not investing in stocks is the Millis trucking company, Millis. They were a third generation trucking company before they sold their company to Heartland Express. Heartland Express did buy them out a couple of years ago, and but the people that were running the company, Dan and Dave Millis, they were running the company. They were third generation, and they finally sold the company. But look, that was generational wealth. That's an example of generational wealth. I believe Millis started in like 1966 or 1976. I can't remember exactly the year. One of those 2 years. The point is you had the people who started it. They passed it on to their kids, and then those kids passed it on to this generation, and they grew it to a point where they could sell the company for $150 million and change everybody's life that's close to them, right? And that is an example of generational wealth. You can do the same thing with real estate, with investing in stocks, with investing in your own business as well. You could do something like that. All of it is very hard to do. It's not hard in the sense of how to do it, but it's hard to do it and stick with it and have the discipline and the work ethic to do it. That is the point. Look, if you have the right plan in place and you work that plan for a long period of time and you don't stop throughout your working lifetime, you are going to create extraordinary amounts of wealth over time. You will, in success, and even with a simple job like being a truck driver. It's really unbelievable. So I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for watching this video. If you want me to make more videos like this in the future, please leave a comment below. I will. I really want to start expanding more on investments and index funds I like. I can do different videos on different index funds that I like, ones I don't like, and why. But I would love to do more videos like this, and I've been meaning to do this video for a while. I finally had time today to get this done. So anyway, I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for watching once again. God bless, and stay tuned for the next video. Peace out.